Hey everyone. So, I wanted to talk today a little bit about some ways that complexity can sneak into your React apps. Specifically, I want to address a type of complexity that you might not always notice right away. It seems fairly innocuous, but it can really come back to bite you in the butt if you're not careful. And that is complex state. So when your state starts to get multiple like flags, could be like boolean attributes or something, but multiple items in your state that you're tracking. We're going to look at an example of a that you've probably written a time or two, which is a form that has an alert. So we have a component here, and this component is called username form. So this is like, let's say you want to write a form to change a username, and you want to display some sort of confirmation to the user when they've completed that that it was either successful or that there was an error. So let's say I want to change my username to Bowser, and I hit save, and I get a nice little confirmation that says your username has been updated. Cool. And if we introduce an error case, so our API returns an error message, then we should display that error and give an error alert, and we do. So um, that's kind of the use case I want to look at here. And so the way that this works right now is we're tracking a couple things on our state. So we have currently we have four state items, and those are we have two flags for the alert. One to say whether or not it's showing, another one to say whether or not it's an error, and then we have an alert message, and then we also obviously have the username that we are typing into the text field here. Um, so right now, the alert, can't really be closed. So when I type in my new username, I hit save. I can't dismiss this alert. Now, if let's say this took me back to like a dashboard or something, and we display the alert at the top of that, it could be really annoying to keep the alert there all the time, right? So it'll be probably pretty quick that users will ask for it to be dismissed. Um, and on top of that, when you're working on a product team, your product manager might request that, well, we want to be able to track how often people are dismissing this alert, so we know that this is useful. I don't know, it seems kind of arbitrary, but it's possible. So we want to track dismissed as like a separate state of this alert, and so the simplest way that you might think to do that is to track dismissed in state. So and I've actually seen this. I've seen this done. People do this in code bases before, um, and so we're gonna create another state item here for dismissed. So what we want to do is probably add a some sort of on close to our alert. So let's look at our alert component. We're using the Grommet UI library to style this alert. And so an alert is actually made out of a layer in Grommet. A layer is kind of like something that can be, it's a component that can be on top of other things. So we create a layer, and then we use a Grommet box component, which is like the basic building block of Grommet's library. So we're using the Grommet has a number of colors, named colors, and there's some status colors. So we're using that for the so like status OK is the green, and then there's status error, that's the red. And then we're displaying an icon and the message text that we pass in. So pretty basic alert here. What we want to do is we want to add the ability to dismiss this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a button and give it an on click, and we're going to call an on close that we're actually going to take in as a prop, and the icon is going to be the close icon from Grommet icons. And we're not going to have any text on the button or anything like that. We don't have it on close yet, so we're going to add one here. And of course, we need to give it a type because we're using TypeScript. So on close is not going to take any properties and it's going to return, it's going to return a void. It's not going to return anything. We don't care about return type there. And now we get a type error because it's missing. I did create this app with Create React App, by the way. So if you're wondering about any of the setup here, this is the out of the box Create React App with the -- TypeScript flag. So now we can add our onClose to the alert, and onClose we're going to set dismissed to true. To use this is dismissed, we're going to combine it with the is showing. So we only want to now we want to show the alert only when it's showing and when is dismissed is false. So now we can change our username, hit save, and when we try to dismiss, it goes away. Okay. So we've added the ability to dismiss the alert, but this is happening really fast. I want to add a little delay in here just so we can see. Oh, and it's not bringing. It's actually not bringing the alert up again, which is interesting as well. So I'm going to add a little delay in here, and say return new promise, and I'm just going to do the resolve. I don't need the reject. And we're going to set timeout. This is a nice little trick for delaying. Set timeout. Oops, no. We're just going to pass in resolve, and let's do like a 900 millisecond delay. This should make things look just a little bit more realistic. Actually, that's probably slow, but I think it'll help us to see. It's not showing now. Go figure. Huh. Is showing and not is dismissed. And is dismissed should be false. And we don't set it to true until we get the onClose, and the onClose really doesn't get called until on click of the button. Okay, so we got things working again. Here, it wasn't resolving it with anything, and so this response that it got back was undefined, and possibly because of the yes, I see. Okay, I think actually the problem was that I have set is error here, but I never have set is showing. See, this is exactly why I'm making this video. And why I wrote the article on this, because this is really complex and very difficult to, it's so easy to forget things like dot to string, I think. Yes, to string. Okay. It's just real easy to forget to do things like, so now if I take out the that empty object there, I think we should be back to having an error again, but this time we should get an error alert. Let's see. So if I change it, I hit save, there it is. Type error cannot read property error message of undefined. Yes. So see, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, I totally missed the set is showing there and the set alert message in my catch. It's real easy to miss that kind of stuff when you've got all of these moving parts to keep track of. So the other thing I wanted to show is, like, let's say you're a few months down the road, and you've kind of forgotten a lot about how this component works, because that's how work goes, right? You might write a piece of code, and then a few months later you come back to revisit it, and it's like, what was I thinking when I wrote this? I mean, how many times have you asked yourself that? So now let's say that we want to, when we go to show the alert again, we want to reset is dismissed. So we're having some bug, and we realize that the solution to it is to make sure we set is dismissed back to false again. Like the alert's not showing up if we try to show it twice. So now that once we do that, we can dismiss it. And now when we try to do it again, well, we got the alert, but wait a minute. Let's try. How can we do this? Let's try giving the ability to trigger an error. So let's have a button, type equals button, on click equals, so we're going to do save username with error. And then we'll say save with error. And so instead of save username like we have here, we'll have a new function save username with error. And what we're going to do here is, actually, you know what? I'm going to do this a little differently. We're just going to pass in a boolean with error, boolean equals false. And then we're going to pass that on here. This is just going to be a little bit easier to pass in. So we're going to take a with error, pass it into here. All we're going to use this for is just to be able to see, just to be able to control this thing a little better, this example. Like, since this is just an example, we need some way to tell it if we have an error or not. So what we're going to do is say if we have an if with error is true, then we're going to return it with error message, and we're going to say like unable to save username. Please try again later. Otherwise, we're going to do the empty object again. Yeah, it doesn't know about save username with error, which makes sense because what we want to do is say some function like that. So we're going to call save username with true, and that's going to tell it that this time we want to show an error. And once again, like, this is not production. This is not meant for production code. This is just so that we can control this example a little bit better and show like what happens when we actually have an error. So now we're going to try to save. This time we're going to get an error. And if I try to save it without an error, well, we got the success message, but our status is still error. That's kind of weird, huh? So it's actually like we actually need to do is set is error to false here, and that should fix that. Thank you, Alexa. You scared the hell out of me. Okay. So now we're going to try again. Let's say save with error. So this time we reset save the is error on success, and so that time we get the success message. Now let's dismiss it, and then let's save it again with error. Okay. So it seems to be working, but man, that was a pain. Like that, having to go and realizing that I forgot the set is showing here, and the set alert message there, the set having to add that set is error into here. Like, I mean, it just was a pain. On top of all that, we're actually we actually have like another condition that could result in a bug, which is we're not setting is showing to false after we dismiss it. Doesn't seem to be causing a problem right now, but there are cases where that could actually be a subtle bug as well. And it's really, I mean, it's an invalid state, right? So what do you do about this? Well, I think the easiest solution, because all of these are like, if you think about like this error could be in multiple states, right? It can be hidden, like it's not shown. It can be in a success state. It can be in an error state. It can be in a dismissed state, right? So if you consider these as like four distinct separate states, then we could actually use a string for this, right? So we could say, instead of like is showing, is error, and is dismissed, what if we just took all of those together into one string, like uh, alert status? Okay, so we can say like alert status, set alert status equals use state, and we're going to say it's starting in the status of not shown. And so now all we have to do is say, instead of set is error true, we would say set alert status error. And then here we would say set alert status okay. And then here we can say set, actually we don't need that at all. We would say set alert status, this is okay as well, is it? No, we don't need this at all now because we don't have is showing anymore. And then here we would say set alert status to error, and we keep the set alert message. And so now we want to say, instead of is showing and is dismissed, we could say alert status is okay, and alert status is, whoops, not equal to dismissed. This is actually wrong. It's not alert status. It's equal to okay. It's alert status is not equal to not shown. This way we can, if we add other statuses like warning or info, which are some common ones that you'll see, this way we can, it'll still work. We don't have to add more conditions for those. And so then here we're going to just pass in alert status as is because it's okay or error, and that'll work. And then here we're going to set alert status to dismissed. And now we're going to try it again. And when we hit save, we still get, our alert is still working just fine. And everything's good. Cool. Now, the one problem with this is great. I mean, I think this improves things a lot. The one problem that I have with it is that there's nothing tying these. These are just strings, right? And so it's just as easy to say set alert status cat, right? And that it'll take that, but it's not going to work. It's not going to. It's still going to be bad. So like we need some way to enforce these statuses, right? And you could use constants. Like if you're not using TypeScript, you could use constants or something like that, and that can work. But it's still possible. You could also use sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So you could use constants, but that's still not going to keep anybody from using the wrong thing. You just hope that they know the right constant to use. You can also use you have the alert component, use prop types to make sure that it's getting the right status value. But the problem with that is they're very easy to ignore because they're warnings in the browser. So if you're not looking at the browser warnings, I've seen people merge pull requests and completely ignored prop type warnings. So I think the best way is to have the TypeScript compiler fail if you use an invalid status. And there are a few different ways to do that. So we're going to use a few features of TypeScript to make this work. The first one is type aliases. So this allows us to create a new name for a type. So like we can say type name equals string, or something along those lines. It allows us to kind of create new types out of existing types, and you can use any type for type alias. The thing we're going to look at is string literal types. String literal types are types that are essentially strings, but they're static strings. So they're useful if you have like a string value that is used one time over and over again. For example, Redux actions are a great use of string literal types because the action type can become a string literal type, and then you can get essentially compiler errors when you use an invalid type. It's very helpful. And then the final feature we're going to look at is union types, and they're pretty well explained on there are a number of other blog posts that explain union types, but the basic idea is that it's a way of combining types to say that this thing could be like a string or a number. So you're kind of joining. It's like a conditional type, so it can be one of any three types. So in this example here, we have a pad left, and padding, initially they set padding to be an any type, which isn't great. And they're actually really only supporting a number or a string. So later on, we can refactor that and say padding is a string or a number. And so that's a union type. It basically allows you to say that this thing could be one of multiple types, but it's only going to have one of those types, not more than one. So when you combine those three, type aliases and string literal types and union types, you can use those all together. You get a way to say that that a thing that's a string has to be one of a particular set of string values. So that allows us in our alert component then to say that status is not just a string, it is an alert status type, and alert status can be OK or error. And we can add additional ones in the future, but that's a good start. And then we can use that like any other type. So we can say status is an alert status. And then, yeah, that should be good there. Now we are also going to export this type because we need to be able to use this. In this case, we need to be able to use the type explicitly in our state, but you may not. Oh, I forgot a status here. We want not shown and dismissed. Whoops. Not shown, okay, error, or dismissed. Okay. So now when we come back here, we have our alert status. If we look at it though, it still says that it's a string. And so what we have to do is we have to tell the TypeScript compiler explicitly to treat this not shown type as an alert status type. So we're going to say as alert status here. I'll bet this is ESLint that's actually complaining here, not TypeScript. So I'm going to ignore that for now, because I'll bet if we hover over alert status here, yes, it is a type alert status now. And so now when we come here to say set alert status, we can see that it actually does take an alert status type for the value. And so if we try to say set alert status cat, look at that. We actually get an error saying type cat is not assignable to type alert status. And so now this is forcing us to make sure that it is actually a valid type. And what's also nice about the string using union types with string literals is that in editors like VS Code or other editors that have good TypeScript support, you will actually get autocomplete based on that. So now we can select error out of that list, and everything is still working. Hopefully you can see here how union types have allowed us to better model the reality of the alert component, which is that that it cannot be in multiple states at one time. So it cannot be both shown and dismissed, things like that. So it fixes a whole class of bugs that we could have run into previously. It's not quite ideal yet. There's still two steps required in order to use the alert and make it show up correctly. So there's still a little bit of room for error. And if you want to see a refactoring to clean that up, which is kind of a bonus because this wasn't in the I didn't go into this at all in the article. But if you want to see that refactoring, I will be posting that as the next video to this channel. So feel free to subscribe, and you should get a notification when I publish that, along with future videos on refactoring complexity in your React apps. So I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.